High school baseball, just the same as college baseball, has big time attentions. Who are the schools to look out for? Who are some of the underrated schools to look forward to? Find out in the next edition of Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to Sideline Sports Podcast. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. Slowly but surely, we will have full baseball on the slate. We had college baseball start. High school baseball, don't worry, folks. We're going to talk about it. That's what we're doing today. High school baseball. Now we're slowly making our way to minor league baseball. Can we have a major league baseball season? But I am Alex Naveja from Sideline Sports Podcast, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast via Sideline Sports Media. Guys, we're close to subscriber number 400. While you're down there, hit the subscription button, the notification bell, and hit the thumbs up. It really helps us out as far as what content you guys really like to hear about. And we're trying to give you guys the hottest topics out there and making sure that you guys are hearing what you want. So also follow us on all of our social media handles, nice and easy, on Twitter, on Facebook. We're creating a TikTok to follow up with Sideline Sports Podcast and the Center Log Show. And I keep talking about Jose having something under his belt, and that's coming up pretty soon, folks. So all you got to do, follow and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That easy. But if you guys really know me, and if you guys really know the high school baseball scene, you have to know the guy on my left-hand side, colleague of mine. For all you Cal Lutheran Lancer faithful, you recognize the face even without seeing the face. You will recognize the voice. That's Nathan Percy, folks. The voice of Olu baseball, along with being with the SoCal News Group. What's going on, Nathan? It's been a while, but we never stop touching base. How are you doing?
Yeah, it has been a while, man. Everything's going well. Keeping busy, that's for sure. Obviously, the baseball season started a couple of weeks ago. And already we've seen some really exciting contests. The Prep Baseball Report team just finished up their inaugural invitational tournament earlier this week on Monday. Happy to be here. Thanks again for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I remember the last time you were here, we were talking Olu baseball. We were talking about some of the programs to look forward to and such. But let's start off right away with Olu baseball. They're looking really solid. I know you could vouch me on that, but hey, my Gar High School, baby, they kept up with the Lancers. You got to give my Gladiators some credit for that one.
They did, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they actually scored first in that game, as you mentioned. I think it was a 2-1 final. It was scoreless going into the fifth. Gar strung some hits together against one of the Orange Lutheran relievers. Orange Lutheran came right back in the bottom half of the inning and scored one, and then scored the eventual game winner in the bottom of the sixth. But yeah, Gar was pretty impressive in that game. They had a reliever named Noah Andrunas who ended up pitching, I want to say maybe 3 innings or so in relief. And he was the one who unfortunately took the loss, but I thought he looked really good. They started a left-hander named Christian Banda, who's supposed to be, their ace this season. He looked pretty good out of the gate. Gar's always they're blue collar worker kids. They're always going to grind out at bats. They're always going to hang tough and hang around. They represent Cerritos really well, and they certainly did it in the opener against Orange Lutheran. The Lancers right now, they struggled a bit out of the gate in that Gar game, and again against Ayala. They had to walk off against the Bulldogs in game number 2, but they started really turning it around. In the third game, they played Huntington Beach. They had their 2 top pitchers combined to throw a 4-hit shutout 16 strikeouts, 8 apiece. And Mikey Romero, who is one of the most recognizable names in their lineup this year. He's a senior shortstop, ended up hitting a bases clearing triple in the bottom of the 6th inning to really pad that lead and give him a cushion. And it seemed like that might have been a turning point, at least offensively, for him, because when they played Ukaipa in the championship game of that PBR Invitational, they came out swinging. They had at least 2 hits in every inning in that game. Everybody in their starting lineup had at least 1 base hit. And before you knew it, that game was over 12-1, and Orange Lutheran was the only team to come out of that tournament with a 4-0 record. So, they're off to a good start. Their pitching staff is really good. They got a couple of really young pitchers in their sophomore years who are gonna provide a lot of good innings for them this year. A couple of sophomores in the lineup who are going to do really well is also Derek Curiel is number 1 or number 2 in the class of 2024, depending on whose rankings you look at. But I mean, they return a lot of kids too from last year. Their entire infield is returning. Their catcher is a 4-year starter. Their number 1 pitcher is with his 3rd year at Orange Lutheran. His 2nd year playing. His sophomore year got washed out due to the pandemic. And then their center fielder Curiel, who we just mentioned, is back as well. The only real holes they had to plug were in left and right field. It seems like they've got their right fielder nailed down, and they've got a couple of guys who might platoon in left field. But they look good as long as they stay within themselves and execute. I mean, I'm sure that's every team. But as long as they focus on the opponent, don't look ahead, and execute the game plan, and continue to string together hits like they did on Monday, they'll be hard to stop. But there's a lot of other really good teams in Southern California who are going to be challenging them throughout the year and potentially in the playoffs if they make it that far.
And that's always the great thing about Southern California sports and Southern California baseball scene. I mean, you've got so many schools. I mean, you've got schools like South Hill, you've got J. Sarah, Olu, the Guard that really likes the challenges, Huntington Beach High School. You've got just a countless array of high schools, even Santa Margarita High School, who was really the underdog going into that Huntington Beach first round of the CIF playoffs. That was a game that just went down to the wire. Both starting pitchers just throwing the complete 7 innings, and it just went to extras to do it like that. But, I mean, that's the good thing about just the baseball scene. A lot of talent.
Yeah, a lot of talent and a lot of parity, too, I think. Any coach in Southern California will tell you there is no easy game on the schedule. Orange Lutheran obviously wants to put together the toughest schedule every year, as do a lot of the coaches. They want to put together something that challenges their kids, forces them to grow, into their season a little bit. But yeah, there are a lot of really good teams, a lot of good talent out there, a lot of collegiate commitments, especially among Division I teams. Even Division II and Division III teams have a decent amount on their rosters as well. So yeah, when it comes down to it, even the top teams are going to fall to some of these other, teams that are just below them, because again, there are so many variables in the game. If you're in a tournament and you have your number 3 starter going up against somebody's ace and you're ranked above them, that could lead to, your ranking going down the following week because that ace is dominant. And all of a sudden you find you've lost the ball game. So it really forces, these teams, especially in the upper divisions, to be focused for, literally every pitch, every at bat, because you never know exactly how important each one of those is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier about Huntington Beach High School. What are they looking like? I know their record doesn't reflect on the talent that Huntington Beach High School has. I mean, I know they had a variety of returners. They did lose a lot of seniors last year. It was a big-time senior class, but they do still have some big hitters. I know they still have some good arms there, like Prestico. I know they still have Smith. They still have Ralphie over there and third base. But what did they look like as far as the game that Olu played against them?
They really just kind of ran into a buzzsaw, I think, with those 2 pitchers. I mean, Orange Lutheran literally put their 1 and 2 starters on the mound against Huntington Beach in that, I guess what would be the 3rd round of pool play. so you can't really fault them too much for not being able to put up. They had opportunities. They loaded the bases, I think, in the second, but the starter was able to get a strikeout to get out of it. And Olu's second baseman made a diving catch that saved a run as well into shallow right field. So Huntington Beach had their opportunities in that game. And what I'm really impressed with is I noticed they have a lot of juniors, in their starting lineup and in the field. And Aiden Espinoza is one of them. Ralph D. Velasquez, like you mentioned, is another. I think their entire infield was juniors. Espinoza obviously plays center. So, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape, not just this year, but next year. And they did throw out their two starting pitchers in Ben Jacobs. He's a UCLA commit. And then, as you mentioned, I think Jack Smith is his name.
Mm-hmm.
He was the second guy they threw out there. And I mean, they've got good stuff. And Jacobs was able to hold Orange Lutheran to 2 runs. Smith, unfortunately, he was cruising until he loaded the bases in the 6th, and Romero hit that triple down the right field line. But overall, I mean, they did well. They just kind of ran into a buzzsaw. I still think that they're going to be the kind of the class of the Surf League this year. Obviously, that league is always tough, and they're going to be challenged. I don't know that they come away from that, undefeated. But, again, there's a lot of talent there, as you mentioned. They've got a lot of good returning players. And again, most of these players are in their junior year, so they'll be back for one more year, even if something happens and this year doesn't go the way that they expect it. They'll be good again next year.
Yeah, the Surf League has always been a strong league, especially with Fountain Valley. Fountain Valley played Huntington Beach very strong. I remember the Oilers got their money's worth last season, one game going to extras, and a big-time throw by, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on his name, from left, just throwing at a guy from left field, and the throw was just on a line. He was rounding second, trying to come in to score, and the throw was just on the money. He was able to tag him out and just saved the game from there with Huntington Beach getting the lead in extras. Edison High School was a team that played them really strong as well. And the Oilers, they always seem to like to schedule really strong. And that's always something that's good about Coach Madure and that coaching staff. They're not afraid of the challenge. They are inviting the big time schools. I believe they played Jay Serra as well. So last year they only played against Jay Serra in the Trinity League. And I guess if you want to count the playoffs with Santa Margarita, but now they play against Jay Serra as well, who are the regionals champions. And I know you and I covered that one, and Olu and Jay Serra going down to the wire.
Yeah, that was exciting last year. And Jay Serra had a really strong senior class, and was able to take it. Orange Lutheran took the first game, but Jay Serra had their top 2 pitchers pitch the last 2 games, and they won that series. They're going to be good again this year. I know, after the Trinity League ended last year and Jay Serra had won it, Coach K, was telling me, hey, watch out, next year we know it's going to be Orange Lutheran's time, but they got a transfer, I think, out of the Inland Empire from Heritage High School, who's a really talented pitcher. They also just got a transfer from Santa Margarita. The shortstop Trent Caraway went over to Jay Serra. My guess is he's going to have to sit out the first 30 days because of that. But that just makes Jay Serra a much stronger program. I've listened to a couple of Steve's games, and they've got some good returners too. Obviously, JJ Hollis is one of them. Owen Fuller, is another who's going to be a big impact player for them this year. So, don't sleep on the Lions in the Trinity League. They're going to be good. And quite honestly, this year's Trinity League, I don't know that I view it as a runaway like it was last year. Obviously, last year was a 2-team race with Jay Serra and Orange Lutheran, both 12-0 going into the final year of the season. But, Servite's got a large class returning this year, and perhaps one of the best players in Roman Martin, who plays shortstop for them. And Jared Hawking, who's an outfielder who I think is committed to UCLA. He's really talented at the top of their order. He returns. They got a few pitchers, and they're actually going to the NHSI this year and making their first trip to North Carolina. So that'll be fun to see how they do out there. I think Modern Day is another year older, another year wiser. I think they'll be better this year. Santa Margarita's they had a good sophomore class last year that's in their junior year this year. And even St. John Bosco has started the year 4-0. So, and they've got some talent there. Last year I think they viewed that as, unfortunately, they lost a year in 2020 in which they were going to take their lumps and learn, and 2021 was going to be their bounce back year. I think they had to delay that a year because of the pandemic, but those kids have learned, and I think they're ready to go this year as well. So I'm excited, man. It's going to be the Trinity League this year. I think is going to be a tighter race than it was last year, and it's going to be fun to watch. There are a few leagues around Southern California that are going to be really fun to watch in 2022.
And the Trinity League is always the league. That's the league in Southern California that has to be in the top of your list. Just the talent that comes out of there, the competition that comes up from there in any sport, really, in basketball and baseball, especially in football, to be top ranked in like top 5, top 10, especially with St. John Bosco every year, Modern Day every year, but now Servite being that football school and being in the map there. But man, you love to see it. You love to hear it. Now we're hearing about SoCal teams moving to participate in these big time tournaments. And I know you were talking about Olu participating in that tournament.
Yeah, Orange Lutheran will be going back to the National High School Invitational as well this year. There's 4 teams representing Southern California who will be there. Huntington Beach is actually going back this year.
Oh, wow.
And Yucaipa, who Orange Lutheran just beat for the PBR Invitational Championship, Yucaipa will be heading out there as well. So you'll have the 4 Southern California teams all in different quadrants in the bracket, and Southern California has pretty much dominated that tournament ever since its inception back in 2013. I think there's been 8 tournaments played there in North Carolina, and I think Southern California teams have won 7 of them. Orange Lutheran's got 3, Mater Dei's got 2, Huntington Beach has 1, and San Clemente won 1 in 2015. So, obviously Southern California is always well represented in that tournament, and for good reason. I mean, we've got good baseball programs here, and again, another 4 are going to go out there in a little more than a month's time. I think second week of April, like April 6th through 9th, I think are the dates this year.
Okay.
But it's going to be fun. I know, each of them starts off with a team out of state, but we'll see how far they can go. I think the one year, I think it was 2014. No, it was 2017. Was won by a team from Florida. I think they're called the First Academy, and they're also going to be in the tournament this year too. So it's going to be tough, another tough one, but I think SoCal will represent well once again. Okay.
I mean, to have those 4 teams alone, you're representing California really well. I mean, no doubt in your mind, you hear those schools and they're going to make it far, they're going to represent. And it wouldn't even surprise you if some of those SoCal teams end up meeting and having to beat each other in the tournament to be
it's happened often
at the top. There's nothing.
The first 2 years, Mater Dei beat Harvard Westlake for the NHSI championship. Orange Lutheran, in their 3 years, 2 of them in their 3 championships, 2 of them have been against Southern California teams. Dana Hills made it in 2017, and Harvard Westlake again in 2019. So like I said, dominated by Southern California, and again, wouldn't be surprised to see them succeed once again this year.
No doubt. It's either Texas, Florida, or California. A lot of great baseball products coming out of there. But let's talk about a program that even major league talent right now, you mentioned them right now, and how can we go without mentioning this school, Harvard Westlake? They won it all in Division I, in the championship game, the final there at Cal State Fullerton against Jay Serra. I know that one was a tough one for Steve to take in, for him to broadcast, for him to take that one and think Jay Serra's eliminated and it's done. But then maybe a week or 2 later, Jay Serra is in the inaugural regional playing against a team in the central section of CIF, and then having to play against some SoCal familiar teams. But how about Harvard Westlake? We just can't forget to talk about them.
No, of course not. I mean, they're and Olu and Jay Serra may argue with me for saying this, but I think they're the most consistent team in Southern California in Division I over the last decade. I mean, Harvard Westlake is consistently in the Division I playoffs. They've made 4 championship games in Division I over the last 10 years. They won it all in 2013. They fell a bit short in 2016 and 2019, but then they came back and won it in 2021. They've had a couple of great coaches, and Matt LaCour and Jared Halpert. And that team, more than any, I think, excuse me, just does a great job of kind of taking their lumps early, if they do take any, and they just continually improve as the season goes along. I mean, more often than not, I see a couple of losses in their schedule early on, but by the time they get to league play, they're pretty locked in. And then they're always making deep runs in the playoffs, it seems. Even this past year, once I saw that Harvard Westlake was the number 2 seed and Orange Lutheran was the number 3 seed, I figured that those two teams were going to meet in the semifinals, and sure enough, they did. They just find a way to bring it late. They know how to battle late in the season and in the playoffs. And this year they've got another talented lineup. I mean, Toussaint Bythewood, is a speedy outfielder who can hit the gaps and hit for power. They've got Marty Kaplan. They've got, obviously, their 2 sophomores. I think they've got more than that, but the 2 that are coming to mind are Tommy Bridges and Bryce Rayner. Rayner is the other guy who's kind of arguably that number 1 in the 2024 class, and he's the guy who pitched and knocked Orange Lutheran out of the playoffs last year. So as a freshman at that, they've they don't rebuild. They really do reload. I mean, they're one of the schools in the Southern section who consistently puts out a good product each and every year. Constantly balanced, and it shows. The results are there. And they started off 3-1 in the PBR Invitational, and I think they just won their 4th game today against Damien by a final of 10-0. So it's shaping up to be another good year for the Wolverines. And don't forget, they play in a tough league too. They're in the 17 Mission League with guys like Notre Dame and Sherman Oaks. Alemany was kind of a surprise last year in finishing 3rd, and they're off to another good start this year. There's just no shortage. Loyola's in that division, or that league. Crespi, there's just no shortage of good teams up in the San Fernando Valley in the Mission League too.
Yeah, the Mission League's no walk in the park when it comes down to baseball talent, that's for sure. And just to let you guys know some of the games that Harvard Westlake had to play against, they beat J. Sarah, a nail-biting 2-1. They lost against Ukaipa. They won against Foothill 5-4, and to lose against Ukaipa, but then Olu beats Ukaipa. It just speaks volumes on what Harvard Westlake can do. And for the viewers that don't know, who are some of the big league guys that have come out of Harvard Westlake?
They have the big 3, the starting pitchers. Jack Flaherty, I think, was a 2013 graduate, maybe 2014. He's with the St. Louis Cardinals. You got Lucas Giolito, who I think was class of 2012. He is with the Chicago White Sox. And then, of course, you've got Max Fried, who just became a World Series champion with the Atlanta Braves. And he was, I think, the same class as Lucas Giolito. They were senior teammates together. And yeah, obviously all 3 big-time successful arms who are continuing to do it in the major leagues. I mean, they've got a number of kids that go on to Ivy League schools as well. They've got kind of a Harvard connection. I think a couple of their kids are committed to Harvard this year. Which shows you not only are they talented on the field, they're bright, hardworking kids. So they've got a few others who are still making some waves in college, and I'm sure we'll be seeing some more names in the big leagues coming from them, in the near future.
So to finish up the podcast episode, Nathan, what are you thinking for this high school season, this baseball season? Do you think it's gonna be a good season? Who should we be expecting? Who are maybe a team that's gonna come from the dark and just run over some of these superpower teams? Like, what do you think about this season?
Every season provides excitement. I mean, there's no reason not to be excited about this year. If we're focusing on Division I, I think one team that might have surprised me a little bit coming out of the PBR Invitational the first couple of weeks was Corona. They put up more runs than any other team in that tournament. It helps when you score 21 in one of those ball games. But they got a huge transfer from Ayala High School and Troy McCain.
Wow.
He was. I think McCain was looked at as being kind of the leader of that Ayala team coming into this year, but he went over to Corona and he's already starting over there and having an impact. They've got a lot of young players who are really good. They've got a guy who catches behind the plate, Springer. I can't remember his first name, and I'm so sorry, but he's really good. They've got a lot of guys who can hit really well, and they're well coached. Andy Wise over there is a really good coach at Corona High School. I would not be surprised to see them have success this year and make a run. You can never forget about teams like Cypress. Head coach John Weber over there always gets the most out of his kids, and you can imagine he's going to do the same today. They lost a heartbreaker in walk-off fashion against Modern Day over the weekend, but they play in the Empire League, and they're likely going to be favored in the Empire League. Arcadia has been really good the last few years. We'll see if they can continue that this year. Damien High School's got a new head coach in AJ Lamonda, a guy that I know well because he was an assistant under Eric Borba for a few years at Orange Lutheran. Really good coach. Will come in with the right mentality for his kids, so I'm looking to see good things out of him. Obviously you've got the big guys. Ukaipa is going to be good again this year. Orange Lutheran and J. Sarah, obviously. I mean, the entire Trinity League, I'd keep my eye on because, again, I think that race is going to be pretty tight. I'd keep my eye on the Mission League, of course, because that race will be pretty tight too. South Orange County always has good teams. It looks like Aliso Niguel. Dana Hills had a good year last year. I think they're struggling a bit out of the gates this year, but I'm sure they'll turn it around. One other one, Foothill. Foothill is supposed to have a good year. Well, I shouldn't say supposed to. That's not the right word. But I think it's anticipated that they'll have another good year this year. They have a lot of returners, a lot of guys who are multi-sport athletes like Austin Overn and Brady Schrank, who are very athletic. And, I think they'll do well this year. A couple of other ones to watch out for out of the Century Conference. You've got El Dorado, you've got Villa Park. Those two are good teams. Corona Del Mar and Los Alamitos will probably provide some issues for Huntington Beach in the Surf League this year. And then Redondo Union, I think, they got off to a bit of a slow start, 0-2, but they bounced back in the PBR Invitational and won their last two. Head coach Mark Barnhill over there, I think will have those boys ready to go against competition in the South Bay as well. And they could very well make a run too. So, I mean, I know I just rattled off a bunch of names there, but it's Division I. You've got 34 teams who are in Division I, so that means that only 2 of them are going to miss the playoffs. So you're going to see just about every single name, that I mentioned in the postseason, and I think any of them are capable of putting together a run to get to a championship game. And that's what makes it so exciting. I think to me, it's the hardest sport for people to come up with team rankings, because there's so many variables. You never know when you're going to run into an ace pitcher who can lock down your offense, and all of a sudden you've dropped from 1 to 5 or something like that. When you have 9 guys on the field at all times, one error could cost you a ball game. So it's going to be interesting to see which of these teams comes out on top in their respective leagues. It's going to be interesting to see which pitchers are really dominant, which offenses come out swinging. And again, it's the one sport where you can say kind of anything happens, maybe at times expect the unexpected. Don't expect a number 1 team to stay up there the entire season, because you'd be hard pressed to find a team that goes through a 28-game schedule 28-0. I mean, it just with this type of talent and this much this many good teams around Southern California, it just doesn't happen. So. Expect to see some changes in those rankings as the season goes along, and expect to see a lot of really good baseball games. It's going to be a fun season. It's already been a fun season, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the next 2 months provide.
I mean, I think you nailed down most of the big time schools. I know we're missing some. We do apologize, but most of those schools, those are the schools that you're going to see at the top of the Division I rankings. These are the schools that you are going to see in the CIF Southern Section bracket come May, and potentially we'll see what CIF ends up doing with the regionals that they had last year, see if they're going to do something again and something to kind of get more teams involved. It kind of seemed like last year that regional that they put together was a little last minute, where players are already thinking about travel ball, thinking about going out of state to participate in tournaments for the travel ball teams. And this time, I think CIF is going to have a bigger regional, something like NCAA regionals. That would be something really cool, just to see some more schools from the central section, even San Diego area. There's definitely a lot of talent throughout California. So this is just the beginning of high school baseball, folks. It just started. Some schools have 4 games under their belt, some have 2, and the games have been great. Seeing some Division II, Division III, smaller divisional schools facing off against these big superpowered schools and giving them their money's worth. So, like Nathan said, you never know what you're going to get in high school baseball. It's just a sport that's so hard to rank, as Nathan said, and it's such a hard sport to really analyze like that. But that's going to do it here on Sideline Sports Podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this one. If you guys enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below which high schools you guys are coming from. Which high school or schools do you think are going to come from the shadows and take over the Division I rankings? And also, hit the subscribe button down below, along with that notification bell. That Taco Bell got to ring in order for you guys to get the notifications. And guys, follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are trying to make it grow as much as possible. We've got some more content coming your way. Like I said, Jose's got something in his back pocket. Could be this week, could be next week, could be whenever, guys. So that's why you got to subscribe. But Nathan Percy from the SoCal News Group and the voice of OLU Baseball. Nathan, as always, man, always a pleasure to have you on, and it's always a pleasure to talk baseball. I feel like you and I could just go on and on and on.
It's definitely a topic that both of us are very passionate about, and I completely agree. And again, thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Of course, man. Got to hear all about how OLU is going to be doing this year and about the Trinity League, how powerful it's going to be this coming year. So I'll be keeping my eye out on that and be tuning in on some of the broadcasts. But I'm Alex Naveja from Sideline Sports Podcast, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. Guys, enjoy the high school baseball season along with the NCAA baseball season. Have a good one, everybody.